Our New Orleans Jazz Classic telecast on Fox Sports New Orleans, brought to you by Chevron. Finding better ways to help keep Louisiana's doers doing. By Energy. We Power Life. By Ochsner, official healthcare provider of the New Orleans Pelicans. By OnPath Federal Credit Union, banking with direction. And by Zatarain's, a New Orleans tradition since 1889. Welcome back, everybody, on Fox Sports New Orleans as we celebrate basketball in the Crescent City, and a great night for everybody, and especially those that witnessed it back in February of 1977. In fact, somebody that witnessed everything that has to do with basketball in the Big Easy. He was there from day one, 1975, when the Jazz were the first season of an expansion team here in New Orleans. And then, of course, he was on the book in 2002 when the Hornets moved here from Charlotte. And it's really an honor for us to have a New Orleans historian with us, Bob Remy. Bob, thank you for taking the time. Tell us about that night, Pistol Pete, the amazing game against the New York Knicks. What do you think about when you look back on that game in particular?
Well, Joel, I think there's two things in particular. One, that it was the only game he fouled out the entire season. He fouled out with a minute 18. And he fouled out, which would have been a three-point play. So you're now looking at 71 points with a minute 18 left. You know, you could possibly go up to 75, 76 points. And the other thing was that, honestly, that night, I did not believe, I think there was still better to come. You know, I know it was Pete had never scored more than 60 before, you know, as a pro. But if he could do that against the Knicks, you know, what, 4 Hall of Famers? He missed 17 shots. He missed 3 free throws. He committed his third foul in the middle of the second quarter. So when you consider all of that, and he still scored 68 points, you know, maybe next week when they played a lesser team, you know, not as a good team, and he didn't foul out, maybe we possibly could be looking at, you know, the mid-70s. So that night, great night, obviously it was a magic night, but I thought there was maybe a better day still coming.
Now, Dick Pavetta was one of the officials. There were only 2 officials on the floor at the time. And you had also brought up earlier than when we were talking about 3 offensive fouls out of his 6 fouls that night. Right. You're not holding it still against Dick Pavetta, are you, Bob?
Of course not. I mean, the gentleman's in the Hall of Fame. You know, right. How can I question that? But, you know, like I said before, Pete never committed offensive fouls. You know, very seldom. They have 3 in one game. It's very unusual. And, you know, those ticky-tack fouls, I'm sure you've seen 1,000 of them, right. You know, loose ball fouls, you know, there's a couple of those. So, you know, with that being said, it still was a great night. But, you know, I was hoping one day it would maybe be a little bit better.
Now, tell us about the scorebook, because Pete's signature is on the scorebook. Take us through that. Did you go back to the locker room?
No, I did not, Joe. Back in those days, everything was done manually. You know, you didn't just press a key and everything automatically popped up. You know, we had sheets to fill out. You know, I kept the book, someone else kept rebounding, someone else kept turnovers, assists, and so forth. So at the end of the game, we had that sheet to fill out. And that took, you know, a considerable amount of time because everything had a balance. In addition to that, I would have to call the game into Elias. So after we finished the sheet, I'd look for a telephone in the hallway at the, you know, at the Dome or at the auditorium, and literally call the game into Elias and go line by line. You know, so there was a considerable amount of time after the game that we were still busy. And, you know, back then, you know, I saw no purpose at that time, but I figured I'd see Pete later. So at a later date, you know, he signed the score sheet for me.
Yeah, it's a classic memento for you. We've also spoken with his teammate, Jim McElroy, his opponent, Bob McAdoo, and they talked about his range and they talked about his handles, but you saw him every step of the way when he was playing for the New Orleans Jazz. Give us your impressions.
Well, you know, he was probably one of the greatest ball handlers ever. You know, I think everybody knows that. A great passer, but he was a scorer. And he had averaged over 44 points a game, you know, at LSU.
Right.
And he primarily was a scorer, but he could do so much, you know. And, you know, when things were going right, when Pete was fully healthy, and the team was playing well. It was beautiful. It was. The team would, fall off some, then Pete would fall off a little bit. And of course, there was unfortunate injury the following year. But it was just a magic time here in New Orleans. And, the fans, consider it like Drew Brees is like nowadays. Pete was considered a Drew Brees back in the 70s. That's how popular he was.
Bob, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you. Appreciate
your
it.
perspective.
Thank you.
And we want to thank all of you for joining us tonight on Fox Sports New Orleans. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you all once again together at the Smoothie King Center.